Good morning, it's Rowena Patton on the Real Estate News Radio Show, and I am excited to be here today with John Pyke. We'll have fun today talking about recruiting and hiring and unemployment, that big, dark, looming thing that is out there right now that is very scary, and we're all wondering what the heck is going to happen. And I thought you'd be interested to hear it from John, who's an expert. And if you're wondering why some real estate gal is talking about unemployment and hiring, well, this used to be my background. For 8 years, I worked for an international corporation working with their 300 CEOs all around the world in a leadership, education, and development program. So it's my background and something I'm fascinated by, and something that I think is a core topic for a lot of people out there right now. So John, tell us about you.
Well, in a short kind of nutshell, what I do is I help companies scale. So I basically take companies that are struggling and help them reach their full potential. So let me just kind of mention one quick story. Back in 2010, when we had another cycle of significant challenge economically, there was the largest furniture retailer in the world here in North Carolina, Furnitureland South, and they had 7 consecutive years of negative sales growth. Wow. 6 of those 7 competitors went out of business, and it was not looking very good at all. And they also had a 50% sales turnover among the people that they were onboarding, for new reps. So I was the first and only consultant that ever used in the 43-year history of the company. It was one of the most discouraged, disenfranchised sales forces that I'd ever come across. Well, using some very proven systems, we were able to have a 48% increase in growth in the first 30 days that I worked with them.
Wow.
In, like I said, one of the toughest economies. And for context, there was an article that was written called "The Sad State of Furniture Sales." So as you know, furniture sales follows the housing market, right? Mm-hmm. And so what happened was furniture retailers their sales had fallen the fastest, the farthest, and there was really no hope of recovery in terms of, a retail segment that's been hit the hardest. Well, to have a 48% increase in sales in the first 30 days, CBS Evening News with Katie Couric got a hold of the story. And we were the feature story on national television, showing how this furniture store was sort of like the beacon, the leader of the pack in terms of, the industry, and how, they were rising above. So what I do is very transformational. It achieves results unlike anything else.
That's amazing. So to really set the table with that, John is in an area in North Carolina. We have listeners all over the country. That was the heart of furniture in the USA. It was the capital for furniture in USA. And as furniture slowly but surely has been copied and outsourced to Southeast Asia, with all those cheap imports coming in, many big furniture retailers, or much more importantly, the furniture manufacturers, especially the bench-made furniture, that's the furniture that's literally made on benches from scratch in the USA, many of them have gone out of business, correct?
Yes, that's absolutely right.
So you took that company in a time, not just when we had a time of looking at an economy that was basically going in the tank at that point. You all remember the big crash of 2008. We also had all of the pressure from Southeast Asia furniture imports that really has put much of the furniture, a backbone of this country, out of business. So what an environment to take a company and lift them to that level. It wasn't just, oh, here's a crash, a real estate crash, and now we can't sell as much furniture. It was in that much broader global scale of the furniture business in this country really struggling and having a hard time. In today's economy of people buying throwaway things, we'll buy a throwaway couch now for $500 instead of something that is solid and well made and that you're going to hand down to your grandkids. The culture seems to have really changed there. So no wonder all those employees felt so downtrodden at the time. My gosh.
Yes, absolutely. Most of their incomes have been cut, by 2/3. And, these are salespeople that are on straight commissions. I'll be delighted to share some of the things that I did to help improve their morale, their motivation, their productivity, how they were able to kind of rise. And yeah, it's quite interesting. One of the biggest takeaways is that these principles work in any industry. Doesn't matter if it's real estate. For example, in banking, I took a small community bank and we trained all their branch managers. And as you know, they're kind of notorious for being order takers because all the traffic typically comes into them. And in the quarter that we did the training, they had the highest sales growth in 16 quarters or 4 years, and the company was
Wow.
sold thereafter. So there's no shortage of success stories for sure in terms of what these types of principles and can deliver.
Well, I think we're in this time as well that is so different. We all know we're thinking differently right now, and also maybe looking at career changes. I think a lot of people are sitting at home and going, oh my gosh, what are we doing with our life? You know? And a lot of the principles that we're talking about today work for you if you're a job seeker, not just if you're hiring. And thinking about how we look at a whole program differently, or how we're looking at our lives differently, or how we're looking at our jobs differently is something that I think a lot of people are in tune with right now. My background in, we call it development these days instead of HR, of course, but it's HR to the average person on the street. It's all HR. It's the same thing. It's just the techniques have evolved somewhat. Was
Right.
around taking a large financial services company and taking 300 CEOs, and let's be honest, and I'm going to offend financial services people out there probably. In financial services, we're not really known for our ingenuity and developing new programs and getting creative and stepping outside the box with things, right? There's lots of restrictions, lots of
Right.
regulations. And our job was to bring those CEOs together and have them come up with new business ideas, come up with startups. And we launched over 150 companies with those CEOs. And we took it all down, each one of their different companies, and they sort of cross-fertilized. They had people from their different companies around the world come in and work on these projects. It was so much fun. So when you start to look at something differently, everything can change. Let's talk about the economic cycles, is always an important one to me. We see this shift diagram often around the economic cycle where it's 7 to 11 years. I did some research on this, and anybody who remembers economics from school, this is not something that's been happening for 20 years. This has been going on since 1860, when the French economist Clément Juglar came up with it. And you are Canadian originally. Do you speak French? Do you know the good old Clément?
I do not know. Je ne comprends pas. My French is very rusty.
I thought you were going to just have a perfect pronunciation of Clément Juglar for me. Back in 1860, he came up with the economic cycle, 7 to 11 years. That means we peak every 7 to 11 years and we trough every 7 to 11 years. It is normal. With the pandemic coming along, and the pandemic being worldwide as well, it's added a whole lot of fuel to this. And of course, one of the key indicators is the current state of unemployment. So what do you know about the current state of unemployment, John?
It's estimated that approximately 40% of the total American workforce is actually not working right now. And that accumulates for more than the entire population of Canada. A couple of months ago, I predicted that our unemployment rate would go up to about 20%.
What do
It's
these
kind of a
numbers
lot of,
mean, though? Are they real? Like, how
mm,
the heck do you get a handle on them? Because, whether you're Republican or whether you're Democratic, it makes a difference to what the numbers are, and they can be twice as big.
that's
And
true.
it's
Yeah,
very confusing.
it
We're
is
not.
very confusing. You have to really drill down into, what they use and, the metrics. So sometimes, after a certain point in time, they don't count people that aren't looking for a job. So, really it's understated in terms of what the true unemployment figures are, because of the fact that there are cycles. That elevates the urgency for especially small business owners, who the strength of their future is really dependent on the quality of their team, that they hire great talent. because the weaker the people that are on their team, the more that they're going to be susceptible to being laid off or to be, to be let go because they're not contributing as much to the company. And this is where companies go through more of a difficult time. They just don't have the bench strength when the economy gets difficult to be able to still bring in the sales, because somebody once eloquently said there's two challenges with every company: sales and everything else. Doesn't matter how good your service is, or it doesn't matter how good your product is. If you don't have great salespeople, you're going to be in a world of hurt.
Absolutely right. Now, I want to come back to bench. What do you mean by bench? That's so important. And when people really get this concept, it's a game changer for them. So explain what you mean by bench. And for those of you who are looking for a job out there, I want you to think about getting on people's benches. For those of you recruiting, think about building your bench. So, and explain what we mean by that, John.
Sure. In an ideal world, you should always be in a mode of recruiting. Always be on the lookout for talent. And one of the biggest challenges that employers face is they really don't have tools or methods to be able to identify talent. So let me just give you an example. I've been to about 6 different conferences for senior level executives in the last 2 years, all focused on talent acquisition. And the single greatest challenge that has come up each of those conferences is faster identification of talent. So great people do not stay on the market for very long. That's one challenge. Another challenge is that the sacred cow in the past, which continues to exist, is the slogan, hire slow, fire fast.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely the wrong strategy. Absolutely the wrong strategy. So in fact, any speaker or consultant needs to have a #1 international best-selling book. And I have one for real estate that's entitled How the Top 1% of Realtors Build World-Class Teams. But my second book, which is coming out fairly soon, is called Hire Fast, Fire Fast.
Ooh.
It is the absolute antithesis of what most hiring managers and people in HR in terms of their strategy. Now, people call taking their time being selective, or dragging their feet being selective, because they've been burned so many times in the past that they think that if they lengthen the interview process, meet them more times, have more people, try to vet them, that more of what's not good about a person will be identified, and they'll be able to knock that person out.
And what it really does from experience is that protracted hiring process ticks people off, and they go for the person who says, we really want you, come on board now. And it may not be a better fit for them, but they're going because that person is like, come on board now.
Absolutely. So, a lot of my clients, after they've worked with me a little bit of time, they say, John, I never thought about how many phenomenal people I have dismissed and never knew that they would have been my next rainmaker or my next rock star. So faster identification of talent is a huge competitive differentiation. You can literally look into the soul of a human being and know whether or not they're going to be a consistent top performer before you even meet them, based on the type of assessments that we use.
And what's so amazing about that is so many people are in what they feel to them is a dead-end job that would be a gift to someone else. Because
Exactly.
when you're in your joy zone doing what you love, and doing what you love can be any number of things. So I worked at an English version throughout college of a Home Depot, and I loved that job, and I made it my job to be the fastest checkout girl after I was the checkout, because who wants to stand in a line? And the second job was knowing where everything was in that store. And here I am decades later, and I can go into a Home Depot, even though it's a completely different brand in a different country, and know what all those little widgets are. So when I was in that checkout job and they went, do you know where the widget blah, blah, blah is? And I could go aisle 12 on the 3rd shelf. That was a gift. And it was a game to me every day to be the best at what I was doing. And we have so much stigma attached to whatever jobs people are doing right now. We had a guy on a couple of weeks ago talking about how he ran AM Electrical, an electrical company. He has something like 90 employees. And he said, I just don't understand why there's this stigma about the trades when a trade can be a wonderful thing for the right person. It can be something that somebody really, really loves to do. You know, it's really interesting when you get people in their sweet spot. It's such a gift to them. It's not just about you being able to get an employee in place that's going to perform at the highest level. It's so much better all the way around.
Let me mention a statistic or a quote from back when I was doing my MBA thesis, and it's, 25 years later, it stayed with me and I can't shake it. And it's a driving force intrinsically for why I do what I do. So they did a 25-year research study to try to figure out what's the single greatest contributor to a person's feeling of sense of worth, self-esteem, and self-confidence. 25 years, and this was done by Harvard.
Yeah.
What they found is that a person's job, like or dislike, exceptional performer or low performer, at the top of the totem pole or at the bottom or anywhere in the middle, the best waking hours of our day is given to our careers. And so that really dictates more than anything else our self-esteem and our feeling of sense of worth. So I take that really seriously because I can then impact tens of thousands of people, because those workers, those employees go home to their families and they take those attitudes and everything with them to the people that they love the most. And so it's so important. The difference between having somebody merely just compliant to what a company is asking them to do versus being committed, and as you say, in their joy zone, where they're in their sweet spot, they're in their element. It's a world of difference. And the difference is not only for the employee, equally as important is for everyone that they touch. It's the customer. The customer feels, right, that as well.
Yeah.
Either positive or negative.
I've had numerous careers in my life over these decades at this point. I ran a marketing company for 10 years, so I was working with a lot of different corporations there, everything from funeral parlors, yes, they need marketing too, all the way to IBM. And then in my management consultancy role, working with corporations, and now my career in real estate, which is obviously consumer to consumer, it's very different. And the importance of giving all-round fleshed out service as a human being, not as a real estate agent. We speak a lot about that. Take your real estate hat off and
right.
Talk like a real person. Don't use that lingo. So when we're talking about recruiting and getting the kind of job that you want today, we're also being very cognizant of not using that mumbo jumbo that we all use in our careers, that whole language. In real estate, it's really funny. So I've trained thousands of agents in different offices around the country. And I say, okay, what language do we use in real estate? And we go out and we talk to people and we talk about the active house. What's an active house? Does it go to the gym every morning? Like, an active house is something on the MLS. Well, say what it is. Say it's a house that's for sale. And the one that I really love, and I've got a whole list of these, is the closed house. So what do you think of when you think of a closed house? You think of a cartoon house with boards and rusty nails on it, when really it means a home that's sold and it's closed out on the MLS. Well, your greatest achievement is in helping somebody sell their biggest asset, and now we're saying it's got old boards with rusty nails in it. This language. Right. That's why when we're talking about a bench, that is our HR or development lingo. So it's important for people to understand what that means. Let's go back to the bench a second. What about keeping in touch with those people that are on your bench? So a bench is literally, it's a sports analogy, obviously, where you've got people waiting on the bench. So most people would go, well, people aren't just going to sit there waiting for you to call them. You never know when that person's unhappy in their current position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely right. There's a lot of things that impact that, whether it's a relocation, whether it's them getting sick, having a child. There's a lot of good reasons why people need to make an adjustment or in a transition. So what that really requires is that in order to minimize the disruption and the profit and a lack of profitability and productivity, you really have to have a network of people that can be willing to kind of step up into those roles, because it is so difficult to find great talent, and you just don't want to fill an empty spot.
A lot of people just hire out of pain. They're in pain. They get somebody in and they just stick with that person, and no one's happy. The person who's managing them is frustrated. They're frustrated because they feel like they're not doing a good job, and that's not nice to take home either. So
Right.
yeah, don't hire out of pain. What about the handful of mentors that you can have, John, that help you in those situations? So maybe you don't have a bench right now, and when you're looking to hire, you can call. It's the same thing as if you're looking for a dentist or a nail parlor or a plumber. That core group of people that you keep in touch with on a regular basis, you make an effort to do that, to
Right.
say, hey, I was hiring for this position. You were the first person that sprung to my mind. Do you know anybody that is excellent at? That's a great way of a fast bench, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So your personal network is one of the strongest, places for you to get a position. And a lot of candidates out there that are listening today that may be looking for a job, a very small percentage of the actual jobs that are being placed come through the internet. So how much time, I'm going to ask, how much time are you searching the web for a job versus networking with all of the people in your community and the people that they perhaps know? That's the
John, that's old fashioned. You can hear that
yes.
coming out like, oh, well, grandma used to do that. I can do it on the internet now. Everything's mobile. Talk to that for a minute, because I believe we're entering this age of authenticity where, especially with what's just happened, people are actually picking up the phone and communicating. Maybe they're getting on Zoom calls like this.
Sure.
They're actually getting on calls and having a conversation. What about if you're a candidate, instead of spending all that time on the internet, thinking about what you really would love to do? And if you're sitting there right now going, well, I'd love to do it, but I'm not educated to do it, or I'd love to do it, but nobody's going to hire me for that. Quit that already and go and talk to people and show some initiative, because that's a rare thing these days. So
That's right.
now I'm sounding like my grandparents, right? So think about what you want to do. Find somebody that does it at a very high level and go and talk to them.
That's exactly right. So about 70 to 80% of all the jobs out there are being placed outside of the internet. And the internet
Wow.
can sometimes be a black hole, meaning you never hear back. You never hear any feedback. You apply to a significant amount of positions, and then everything goes dark. Getting out of your comfort zone is something that's very important. Putting all your eggs in that basket or spending most of your time with jobs on the internet is a mistake. What's interesting is you mentioned something incredibly critical a little bit earlier, and I'd like to come back to it. Almost everything I do is based on science. It's based on analytics that you can trust and research over 4 decades. So what we did is we did a research study of over 200,000 people in 23 countries, every industry, every position. And we were trying to isolate what is it that makes the highest and most successful people, consistent top performers. And what we found is only 9% of the total population, or 18,000 people out of the 200,000, they achieved all their performance objectives in a given year. We called it the genius study, okay? To try to find out what is it that this genius audience had that the other people do not. And it's actually in a book entitled What's Your Genius? And It's a combination of a 7-year research study. The forward is by Tony Robbins. And there are 2 characteristics that these elite 9% shared and they had. And the great news is that they're all learned. These 2 things are learnable. The first is what we call self-awareness or self-knowledge. So here's the concept. The more an individual, the more you know about your strengths, your areas of deficiency, what you're motivated by, your natural style, the more you're in a better position to select a job or a career or a position that's really tightly aligned with what you naturally do well, okay? And then the second characteristic of this elite 9% is what you talked about, authenticity. Now, it's interesting that the word authentic, from Latin into English means to create. So when you and I are authentic to how kind of we have been naturally gifted and created, right? We're in the best position to create the most fulfilling life. And the opposite of authenticity, obviously, is counterfeit. So you have so many.
Let's just run that again. That is so important. Let's do a rewind on that. So let's start right at authentic. That was just a wonderful 30-second slot there. I want to hear all that again.
So again, the two characteristics, one is self-knowledge or self-awareness, and the second is authenticity. So and ideally, and here's from an employer point of view, here's the power of this. When you as a potential employer are able to tell the candidate, here's what we see in you, here's what we know about you. It's not a matter of if you're going to be successful at our company, but how successful. You are truly leading that individual. And here's another scary statistic, Rowena. Gallup did a global research study, and they found that only 11% of the entire work population, 11%, spend most of their day in their area of strength. So what that means, you realize here, this is the really, if we isolate it down to its base level, this is the reason why there is a global pandemic for a lack of engagement. Because if we are spending most of the time in areas that we're not very good at, and because we don't enjoy it, right? We don't like what we're doing, it drains us, it sucks our energy, even when we're at our peak physical fitness. Whereas when we are spending most of our time in our area of gift and zone, or what I call your sweet spot or your element, right? Then people rise, they flourish. So that's the reason why Furnitureland South and all my clients typically see an incredible elevation of productivity, because what I do by using these advanced assessments, I'm able to look into them and I'm able to tell them, here's your giftedness. Here's where you are incredibly strong. Here's where you need to focus your time and attention. Now, the vast majority of the training and development coaching world want to take a weakness and try to develop it into a strength. It's absolutely the wrong approach. Absolutely.
Agree. Totally agree.
All it does is negatively reinforces what you're not good at, and it's very discouraging. So again, because people today, 91% of the general population really don't know what their areas of talent and strength are. So when you as an employer are able to identify that and pick that out, so if it's sales or administration or operations, and say, so I'll give you a quick example. We had a guy who was a pastor who had not one day of experience in sales. He had some of the best profiles or assessment results that I've ever seen. Okay. We brought him in and gave him the position to be a real estate agent. And in a town of only 50,000 people, with an average price point of about $240,000, he sold over $15 million of real estate in his very first year.
That's a lot, guys. Just so you know, that's a lot. So I was Rookie of the Year back in 2007 internationally for the company I was with at the time, and I did about 12.5 million on my own with no help. And that was 42 deals. So and that made me Rookie of the Year, the new starter of the year. So think about what this pastor did. It was my price point was a little lower. It's 180,000 at the time. We're 320 here now. Isn't that crazy? But think about what that means in terms of what he did. So he absolutely knocked it out of the park, and he came in as a pastor.
Yeah, so less than 5% of the total realtors do 5 million or more. So he's in like the top 1/10 of 1%. In the last 3 years, he's done 110 million combined. So the thing is that when you hire the right person, they consistently perform. So, here's the ironic aspect. At virtually every company globally, from a sales point of view, 20% of the salespeople consistently sell 80% of the total sales volume. But most owners and senior executives are scratching their head thinking, why is it that Sally or John or Rowena, what is it that they have that the other 80% don't have? It cannot really be trained. It's basically innate. So that's why hiring the right person is absolutely critical. And right now, employers have a golden opportunity, because the unemployment rate is so high, to be able to select, right, some incredible talent. Rewind 3-4 months ago, the unemployment rate was under 4%. It's under 2% in some places.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more challenging. So
McDonald's was closing some restaurants because they couldn't get the people in place. It was that dire. Yeah, it was really an unemployment rate that made it all about what the employees wanted to do. And that is a big shift now, whereby employers will be able to find more people. This is Rowena Patton on the Real Estate News Radio Show on WWNC 570 AM. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. This is Rowena Patton with John Pyke on the Real Estate News Radio Show. Let's come back to a second for how, when we say assessments, these are not tests. There is no right or wrong. You are a unique person that has your own magic. The key is to find that magic. And I think a lot of young people, I had this conversation at the weekend with a lovely young woman who currently works with her family, and she's looking to change careers, and she's reading the parachute book, and she's doing this over here and that over there, going, oh my gosh, I just don't know what I want to do with my life. I just don't know what I want to do with my life. How many young people do we know that are in that situation? And for some people, they're still there in their 40s and their 50s. What would you say for those people, John, or for those people listening who know somebody that's in that place? Is it ever too late to make a career switch and really figure out what it is that you want out of life?
It's never too late, but I think that our traditional educational system has betrayed us. I used to think that the educational system today was broken, but it's not. It's designed to work exactly how it was created. And I saw some intriguing video last night about the educational system and what's going to be happening in the near future with everything being shut down and the impact on the educational system. But here's what I would like to mention. When I was a senior in college, I was an undeclared major. You heard that correctly. I majored in confusion. I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing. And people are pretty much in the same boat. So when I travel internationally and speak all over the world, I often take them through an exercise. How many of you changed your job or changed your major in college at least one time? 80% of the people's hands go up. How many of you took a job right out of college that has absolutely nothing to do with your major? About 80% of the people's hand go up. How many of you are doing a job today that has absolutely nothing to do with your first job? About 80% of the people's hands go up. So we're in this situation where we're lost, where we need some guidance, we need some direction. And in my case, my advisor said this, John, you should be an elementary teacher. And I said, pardon? Why is that? Because we have a shortage of men in elementary education. It's dominated by women. And the reason she gave me that advice is because she was an elementary education professor. So guess what, Rowena? I have a minor in elementary education. She didn't ask me one question about my aptitudes, my interests, my likes, my dislikes, what gives me energy, what takes it away, nothing.
Yeah.
So I have basically a triple major: education, business, and religion. Talk about a hodgepodge of stuff. Okay. So
but you pull from it, right? There are things that we do in our lives that, just like my whatever the Home Depot was there, experience, yep, or the experiences that you have growing up where you think maybe you can't do something. And I want to speak to those people for a minute. If you are at school and you're like, oh, I can't get the grades to do XYZ, or I can't do this, go and talk to somebody who's doing it. There's a million people out there doing that amazing job. Like maybe you want to be a veterinarian and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can go through all the years of that or afford it or anything else. If you really want it, you can do it. And that investment in your upcoming career will be with you for the rest of your life. And even if you're 50 years old, you're like, my job sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm tired and I've had this time off and I'm depressed and I just don't know what I want to do with my life. Start looking at the tools that you can use. Do you have any suggestions there, John, especially for people who are tight on budget right now because maybe they've been furloughed or they're not working or they've been fired because of what's going on? Anything they can use? Any tools, tips, tricks, hints?
The one suggestion that I have is there is a tool that I use, and I have seen hundreds of tools in my 20 plus years. So I've not seen to date that's anything better. But first of all, when we're talking about tools and assessments, let me mention this. There is, thankfully, the marketplace has adopted personality instruments such that they're commonplace. And they're very effective, but they're very one-dimensional and they're very limited. So they're incredible for team building and communication skills. But again, getting back to research, 100 years of research has basically yielded that if you're using either just a DISC profile or Myers-Briggs or any other type of personality instrument, it's, from a hiring point of view, it's only slightly better than just looking at a person's resume and making a decision, not even meeting them, just basically making the decision based on the resume. So it's woefully inadequate when it comes to hiring. Simply put, it doesn't go deep enough. So the assessment that I use is combined of 3 different assessments. And the one that's the most important of all measures the hardwiring of the brain, and it tells us what you're innately or naturally good at, where your talents reside. So this has been an absolute game changer for the people that take this assessment. And most people will tell me, if in their 40s and 50s or even later, John, if I only had access to this information sooner, it would have changed the trajectory of my career. Knowing what my strengths are and knowing where I can thrive and flourish and be at the highest productivity and have my highest level of engagement because I'm actually enjoying what I'm doing. The challenge is most people don't know what they don't know. And if you don't know what you don't know, you're powerless to do anything about it.
Yeah.
So one last statistic or quote, as I've traveled, and I often say this from the stage, I ask, education is typically our second highest investment next to our home. So what does education actually mean? And I mean, I've had a room full of educators, principals, teachers, and only one person in the entire presentations, all the presentations I've ever delivered, knew that the word educare means to bring forth or to bring up or to bring out. Education in its inception was about harnessing a person's basically potential that they didn't realize that they have, so that they can bring it to the surface or bring it up and out so that they can leverage the best of who they are. We are so far away from the true and real meaning of what education truly is. And that, at the end of the day, is the cause for so much challenge for HR people, for hiring managers, because they're trying to identify in the candidate whether or not they have the right talent to be able to, thrive and do the job exceptionally well.
It's really sad. It's like, I want you to be able to go into schools and do this. When somebody is formed at 13 or 14 or 15, maybe, to help them with that. What if there's somebody out there right now that wants to do it as an individual? I mean, obviously you can help companies, you can help corporations. What would you say to that 25-year-old that I was talking to at the weekend that is right now just looking around, trying to think what she's going to do for the rest of her life career-wise, or at least how she's going to start out? She's making a big leap.
Well, I would give 2 suggestions. One costs nothing and is very powerful, and the other requires a little bit of an investment. Mm-hmm. Reflect back at the 10 most influential or powerful events that have happened in your life. And if you have a picture of it, that's even better. All right. And I want you to go back into that time where you were, energized, where you were fulfilled, where your spirit just soared, where, for me, my very first training and development program was at the age of 13. And I was in the front row, and Jim Rohn, which is Tony Robbins' initial mentor, was the guy that was speaking. I was absolutely enthralled with the idea that I could make a full-time living by helping other people become the best that they could be. But as I started to go through life, right, I forgot about that moment in time, mm-hmm. right? When I was 14, I was doing some sales training with my father, with his sales team, and doing some role plays. That was kind of, my father was a legend when it came to sales, and was the #1 single most decorated employee at Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, won more awards than anybody in the history of the company. But when I went back and retraced, I was a camp counselor during a summer at a basketball camp, and that just lit me up, right? That was, me being able to invest my life and to think that I can have an impact on somebody else in the course of their life and giving them advice and things like that. There are some themes or some patterns that emerged as I look back at 5 or 10 of the most impactful, most enjoyable, most rewarding. Where was it where your spirit just kind of came alive? Where was it where, your passion was ignited? That's something that is a very powerful exercise to do. And then the second exercise is necessary because we have so many blind spots. Only 11% of the people are spending the majority of their time in a career that's connected to their strengths. So the majority of people are not spending their time in what they do well, what they naturally do well. So, not to be self-serving, but you should really contact me and take this comprehensive assessment
Yeah.
so that you have a higher level of self-awareness. Elevate your self-knowledge
Hmm.
about who you are, what's important to you, why you do what you do, what gives you fulfillment, where you are naturally strong, because you do not want to try to improve your weaknesses. You want to focus on your strengths.
I'm such a huge believer in that. It's funny in my coaching life, as I coach people around the country, I have an assessment tool that does exactly that, that looks at an event, the year it happened, the highs, then the lows, then what I learned. It's 4 different sections. And
Awesome.
when you play with that and you look down it, you can find common words in there. And you know this, John, because you've been through this with people many times. You
Boom.
find common words in there that really shape where you've come from. And we forget those events and what we came from them. It's funny, at the weekend, I said to her that I'd share that exercise with her. And I'm happy to share it with anybody out there. Just ping me on Facebook, Rowena Patton. Look me up at All Star House, however you want to contact me there. When you're driving down the road, what brings a lump to your throat? When you're driving home and you think, oh my gosh, that was such a great experience. Whatever it is, we can hone in on that. And yes, you don't get to sit there. We're not just going to enable you to sit there and get a lump in your throat all day long. However, we'll put you in that arena so that you can really grow and blossom and develop. One of the best compliments anybody ever gave me is that they said to me, you're 2% genius and 98% hopeless. And I'll take it. I'm fine with that, because
Yeah.
the gift in really self-awareness, which is what you started with, John, is knowing what your strengths are. And if your
Exactly right.
strengths are very narrow and you're really good at it, that's where we want you. Maybe you're more of a jack of all trades and you're good at 30% of what you're doing now. We'll get you in that 30%. And for people out there employing people, when you get people in that genius, the whole freaking thing explodes.
So let me just expand on that for a minute. I worked for the largest sales training company in the world at one point in time. They were like the 800-pound gorilla, the least risk vendor. Nobody ever got fired for using them. 85% again of the Fortune 500 used this sales training program as their system. And what I learned, I had a crisis of conscience. Even though I sold more in my first year than anyone in the history of the company, and I was starting to have a really promising career, I resigned from the company. What I found out was that after the training, the high performers continued to be high performers and the low performers continued to be low performers. There was no direct causal link between the training and an increase in sales. And so at Furnitureland South, when I trained them, the top 20 people in the company had an average increase in sales of 60%. The remaining 130 people had a sales increase of not even 10%. So the people that had the 60% increase in sales, their genius was sales. They're predisposed to be exceptional in sales. So when you train them, they rise and they flourish. So this training, I train them every other week, right? The same place, the same time. Everybody heard the same message. Why is it that the top 20% had a 60% or 6 times the increase in sales that the rest of the sales force did? Because their innate strengths and talents are in sales. So here's what really makes a difference. And let's make this practical. And so part of my journey was I came to Greensboro, North Carolina, because to learn from one of the co-founders of the Center for Creative Leadership and his life's work. And the foundation of everything at the Center of Creative Leadership is self-awareness, using psychometric tools to help executives, mid-level, people who are stalled, people that are senior executives make breakthroughs, right, based on self-awareness and self-knowledge to be able to impact their organizations to a better extent. Another statistic is that when you onboard an employee beyond knowing, where to find the stapler and, taking care of all the financial, forms in the proper way, they have found it increases retention by 82%. 82% increase in retention. Think about the savings. Do you realize that the average company, from a sales point of view, the cost is $140,000 for a salesperson turning over in recruitment and in replacement and in training and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't even have to do with lost sales.
Yeah.
$140,000. So 82% increase in retention. And here's something equally as significant, if not more, a 70% increase in productivity.
Wow.
70. So here's what it looks like. After they take this assessment, what we say, look, Here's why we selected you. There we had 200 people apply. You were the top 5 people, and here's why. So here's your communication style. Here's how you prefer to be communicated with.
The style. Some people like to be told bluntly what their
Correct.
issues are. Some people like pillows put around it and
Right.
a fluffy conversation.
The new person coming in is thinking, do I like them? Do I trust them? Is this, opportunity really what the person said it was? And do I see myself here long term? And then the employer is like, is this the same person that's showing up today that was, articulating who they were in an interview? So it eliminates that 6 months of, trying to be aligned and be on the same page. You know precisely how to communicate with that individual. It's powerful. Second of all, you know how to create the ideal work environment. You know specifically what fulfills and what motivates them, or simply put, why they work. So instead of guessing, right, that may be money and giving them a bonus is what's going to light them up. If for someone that's not financially motivated, that's going to fall flat. It's actually going to demotivate them, when really maybe it's quality of life and giving them an afternoon off to go with their family and spend more time with their family is what's going to, light them up. That's just one example. Harvard did another research study, and they found that if you try to encourage someone in an area of deficiency or weakness and try to, lift them up, it actually not that only does it fall flat, it actually discourages them, because the recipient realizes that you're asking them to do something that they're not good at and never will be. So, and then the third component is talent. You're very crystal clear on letting them know, hey, you're in the top 5% when it comes to this. You're in the top 2% when it comes to this. So we know, that you're exceptional in these areas, and we are so thrilled that you're on our team. You can't even believe it, right? And so when you start that way in the first week, uplifting and encouraging them and telling them what's great about them, which is what I did at Furnitureland South. So I knew that I had only one chance to turn that place around, and for them to trust in me as an outsider, right? Because they're thinking, is my job safe? Why are you really here? All these types of things. The first 5 people that came out said, this guy's amazing. This guy's awesome. He told me everything about what's good about me and where to spend my time and focus my efforts. And he also told me where my deficiencies reside, so that I'm intentional and deliberate about not playing to my deficits or my weaknesses. And in some cases, I would have a couple of people partner up because they complemented each other. One person was exceptional at administration, and the other person was not. The other person was exceptional at being able to communicate and to build trust and rapport, and the other person was weak in that area.
Yeah.
So, that's part of how we were able to turn the company around, is we were able to make people self-aware of what their natural innate giftedness is and their strengths, focus them in those areas, and then allow them to flourish.
Individuals who are looking for a job, I hope it's been helpful today, and really think about getting in your joy zone. I know there are people out there that are thinking, I'm just trying to put food on the table. How can I take care of me? I've got to feed the kids. But the thing is, taking care of you and doing what you love, the kids will have a very different parent. And then they'll seek something that they love because you're modeling it for them. It's really, really important. Even if it's doing classes at night or online. I mean, there's so many online classes now that you can, break it down, chunk it down into baby steps so you can make that change, but really look at what you're good at. For the people out there who are saying, well, I'm just a small company, that won't work for me. It works for you if you're even starting out building a company. It works for you if you're 3 people, if you're 6 people, if you're 100 people. I've been involved in it with 170,000 people, all on the payroll, and with 300 CEOs in place. So, and now I'm a small company. We stay small on purpose. We're 6 people, and it works really well. So this works whatever your size. Am I right in that, John?
Absolutely right. And the truth be told, as I mentioned earlier, the smaller the company, the more important it is, because there's nowhere to hide. And today, you need to wear multiple hats. The smaller the company, the more versatile the employee typically has to be. So, when we did work with GM, 80% of their entire employee base are risk averse. They're high S's in the DISC language. So is it any wonder why they miss fuel efficient cars by 3 decades? It's like trying to turn the Titanic.
Yeah.
right? They've got all these people that don't want to change. They don't want to do anything different.
If you're small, it's even more important. If you're struggling right now, there are so many struggling businesses out there. My heart goes out to you. You're sitting there going, shall I reopen at my restaurant? Shall I reopen at my hair salon, nail salon, retail store, whatever it is? You know, you're really thinking about, shall I continue? If you're a real estate agent feeling that way, give me a call. We have an Earn While You Learn program. Therefore, you can learn all of our programs. We have a best-selling book on selling homes with 15 programs in it. You can come in and learn the programs while you get paid. All of the programs are there to help consumers. That's where it was designed from. It's not to help us as agents. It's to help you as a buyer of a house or a seller of a house. So come in and learn those programs and get paid while you're doing it. If you've been out there for a year as a real estate agent, you're going, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I don't know what to do next. Or I've done a couple of deals and I'm twiddling my thumbs. You know, in real estate, guys, you probably don't know this, but we're supposed to be the marketer and the salesperson and the transaction manager and the listing manager. It's absolute nonsense. You can't be all of these things. And therefore, if you're not sure where your real talent lies, come and talk to me and I will help you with that. And you'll actually be earning why you do it to see whether we're all a good fit. So there's lots of ways through it. If you're a small business and you're thinking, I just don't know if I can do this anymore, and you're getting burned out, shall we even bother? Especially if you're a little bit older and you were thinking about retiring in a few years anyway. Think about what this strategy might look like if you assessed your current employees and then you looked at assessments through somebody like John for your new employees to rebuild your business. Give it that swan song. I'm all about this, like the rising phoenix. I started real estate in 2007 when we were going in the toilet, and I doubled my production every year. Like that, you can rise again. Don't just sit there in the background. It is not time to be on a deck chair on the beach yet, maybe for a couple of weeks to relax for a while. But we can get you back there. Talk to somebody like John that will help you rebuild your business. So how do people get hold of you, John?
The best way to get a hold of me is my email, I suppose. That is John, John, at thetalentgenius.com. That's John at thetalentgenius.com. My company was actually named after this book, What's Your Genius? That's why the genius is in the title of my company, The Talent Genius. Today, more than ever, executives want to minimize or eliminate as much risk as possible. And when you can use data and advanced analytics for not only employees, but also identifying your current employees, like you said, where their area of giftedness is so that you can help them be the most productive. It's an absolute game changer. So it's an inspiring message, Rowena, that you just gave to all the entrepreneurs and out there. There's a lot of people that are struggling and hurting. There are a lot of people that have big question marks. Should I reopen? How long should I try to, weather the storm? A lot of people that are hurting financially. So it's a very timely message.
Don't believe what you see out there on social media and how you think people are living their lives. All of us who are authentic people that have built businesses and have lived our lives have gone through major trauma. I've failed. The whole key to life is fail as quickly as you can and then learn from how you failed. I've fallen so many times, I can't even count them anymore. And the key is to keep finding that energy, however old you are, to get back up, get back on the horse and find different ways to do it. You know what the definition of insanity is. Keep repeating the same old things and expecting a different result, right? So do it differently and look at your most important asset, your skills and talent, and the skills and talent and innate abilities of the people that you hire. When you do that, everything can change. But don't give up. Please don't give up. I'm here supporting you. Anything I can do, and John certainly can support you too. Any closing words there, John?
I would say that in this time of disruption, we've had the privilege of being able to be more inward and more focused. And I know that myself included, that I've taken 3 different coaching and training programs to help sharpen my skills and so forth. And I would encourage everyone out there, find a mentor, find a coach in the area of life that you need it the most, because literally the right coach and the right mentor can take anywhere from 5 to 30 years of learning curve and help you compress all of that and help you to be more effective. So find somebody qualified that has a good track record, that really knows what they're doing, and they can make all the difference in the world to you personally.
Thank you so much, John. You're always a delight to talk to. And I don't know, it's something about Canadians. He's here in the States now, but it's something about talking to somebody that was born in Canada. You can still hear a little bit of the Canadian in there, that they just seem so much smarter. They have all this expertise. It's amazing. So thank you for that. Hope you've enjoyed it today. If there's anything we can do to help, let us know. Whether you're thriving and we can help you tip it up just a little bit, or whether you're sitting there going, I don't know, I'm feeling a bit woe is me, shall I continue? We can help you there too. This has been John Pyke and Rowena Patton on the Real Estate News Radio Show. We'll see you on the radio next week. This is Rowena Patton on Real Estate News Radio. I would love to hear your questions. Give us a call and I'll see you on the radio next week.